What if the devil doesn't look like a monster? What if he shows up in a luxury sedan, wearing a tailored suit, with blue eyes and a smile that makes you feel chosen? This is the story of a man who found out the hard way, and he wanted the world to hear it before it's too late for someone else. Hey, welcome back. I'm Raw, and you're watching Raw Stories. Today's story is something I've been sitting on for a while, because it deserves to be told right. We received this submission anonymously. The sender created a brand new email account, nothing but a string of random characters, just to send us this story, and nothing else. No name, no location. He simply signed it, Marcos. And before you ask, yes, I believe that's a fake name too, for obvious reasons. He wrote 5 pages, single-spaced, and he said, "Tell this to everyone, especially anyone who's ever thought about making a pact." So, let's get into it. Marcos grew up poor, not struggling poor, genuinely, deeply humble. The kind of poor where you understand from a very young age that the world isn't built for people like you. And when you're 18, broke, and not particularly handsome, the world makes sure you feel every bit of that. So Marcos became obsessed, not with drugs or alcohol, with money. With the idea that money would fix everything. Money meant respect. Money meant women. Money meant becoming someone. By the time he was 19, that obsession had crossed a line. He decided to make a pact with the devil. Now you might picture him hunting down a sorcerer, buying cursed books, performing some elaborate ritual. But no, Marcos is nothing if not direct. One night, at midnight, he walked alone to a crossroads in the middle of a sugarcane field, and he simply called out 3 times, then again 3 more times, then a third round. Nothing, no smoke, no sulfur, no red-eyed stranger stepping out of the dark, just crickets and wind through the cane. He went home feeling like an idiot. 3 days passed. Marcos and his friends were at a bar, one of those places with tables that spill out onto the sidewalk. Cheap beer, loud music, nothing remarkable, until a car pulled up. Not just any car, a luxury sedan, the kind that doesn't park in front of places like this. A man stepped out, mid-30s, blonde hair, blue eyes, dressed like he'd just walked off the set of a 1940s gangster film. Immaculate, expensive, impossibly elegant. He sat down at their table like he'd been invited, ordered whiskey, and spent the entire night with them. Marcos didn't think much of it. People are strange sometimes. But the next morning, at the battery factory, where Marcos worked as a general assistant, that same man walked in, crossed the floor, walked directly toward Marcos, past everyone else, as if he was the only person in the room. He had a stare, Marcos wrote, that was almost hypnotic, like looking into something that was looking back harder. The man got very close, placed a hand on Marcos's shoulder, and whispered, "Hello, Marcos, we are here. We heard your plea." Marcos was confused. What plea? Who's we? The man smiled and said, "We'll be waiting for you at 6, and walked away. Marcos asked everyone in the factory if they'd seen the man. No one had. No one knew who he was talking about. That's when it clicked. At 5:45, he left work and started walking toward the bus stop. The luxury sedan pulled up beside him. The back door opened on its own, and there the man was. The clock on Marcus's watch read exactly 6 o'clock. He got in. Inside the car, the silence was complete. Then Marcos asked the only question that mattered. Who are you? What do you want? The man's answer was deliberate, precise, almost theatrical. We are many. What we want is for you to join us. This body of flesh is only a mediator between us and you. We are legion. My brothers and I wish for you to serve our beloved master, Lucifer. In exchange, all the wealth you desire, every earthly pleasure, for as long as you live in flesh. Marcos sat in stunned silence. Because here's the thing, this was exactly what he had asked for. This was the response to what he'd called out into that sugarcane field 3 days ago. And some part of him had never really believed it would work. Now it had, and he was terrified. He asked the question that surprised even him as it came out of his mouth. What about God? If you exist, then God exists too. What happens to me before him if I give you my soul? When I die, is hell real? The man laughed. Not cruelly, almost fondly, like a professor amused by a student's naive question. Marcos, what God do you mean? The great rival of our master. Calm yourself. It is nothing but a game of chess. Lucifer, the great architect, desires only joy and pleasure for humanity. It is the other God who is the cruel one. He uses tragedy and suffering to collect followers. He mutilated his own son to amass believers. The eternal fire, just another threat he uses against his enemies. Marcos looked at the man and said 3 words. What do I do? The man handed him a black briefcase, executive style, gold clasps. He told Marcos to open it only when he got home and to enjoy the week. Marcos did exactly that. Inside the case, cash, stacked, banded, overflowing with cash, roughly the equivalent of $150,000 USD, and beneath the money, a large envelope made of thick brown paper, textured. It had a smell, not strong, but wrong, like meat that had been left out. Marcos was 19 years old. He threw the envelope in a drawer and went out to a club. Of course he did. That night, he was the biggest man in the room. He bought rounds for the whole place, took his friends to a strip club, and spent the night in a blur of music, drinks, and things I'll leave to your imagination. Within days, new car, new apartment, new life. He assumed the pact was done. He was waiting to find out what came next. He had no idea what came next. About 40 days after receiving the suitcase, Marcos was in his new apartment at midnight, lights off, watching TV in bed. He looked up. There was a woman standing in the doorway. He describes the fear as almost cardiac, a human-shaped silhouette that had appeared from nowhere, backlit only by the TV screen. His whole body seized up. Then he turned the lamp on. She was stunning. Tall, pale skin, jet black hair, black eyes, red dress, long, fitted, with ornamental detailing. She was smiling at him. Marcos calmed down immediately, because of course he did. She spoke in a voice he described as smooth and deliberate. I'm the manager of your contract. You can call me Empusa. She asked him to retrieve the brown envelope from the suitcase. He did. She placed it on the nightstand, and then she kissed him. Marcos wrote that what followed was, and I'm paraphrasing, the most extraordinary night of his life. He describes sensations he had no words for, a desire that felt less like attraction and more like compulsion. They slept together, and Marcos, for the first time in a long while, felt like the world was exactly as it should be. The intercom buzzed. Marcos got up to answer it. Empusa was already awake, dressed in completely different clothes from the night before. No sign of the red dress anywhere. He looked and couldn't find it. He went to the door. A young man, tall, early 20s, extremely well dressed, stepped directly inside without being invited and sat on the couch. And then something happened that Marcos still struggles to describe. Empusa walked toward him, took his right hand, and began to slowly suck on his index finger. It was, he says, strangely seductive until he looked down. Her feet, they were gold and shaped like hooves. Before he could react, her teeth changed, rows of them, serrated, sharp, like a shark. She bit down hard on his finger. Deep blood flowed freely. With his blood, she drew a symbol across his bare chest, an inverted cross. Then the man on the couch stood up, took the brown envelope, the one that had smelled of rot since the beginning, and handed it to Marcos. He asked him to write a few words in his own blood. I, Marcos, deliver myself to Lucifer. He hesitated, but he thought about the money, the apartment, the car, the life he'd tasted. He wrote. The moment he finished, he felt something shift inside his chest, like a door had closed. When he turned back, Empusa was gone, not in the room, not in the apartment. She had simply ceased to exist. Only then, in the silence, did Marcos understand that the man on the couch had been Satan himself. About 40 days later, Marcos received a phone call from a multinational corporation. They said there was a meeting he needed to attend, that it concerned a deal he'd recently made, that his presence was vital. He went. The receptionist greeted him by name, warmly, as if she'd been expecting him for years. He was led to a conference room, an oval table, 20 chairs, one empty seat. Every man at that table greeted him by his first name. None of them he had ever met. One stood up at the head of the table and said, Marcos, sit down, you're family now. And in this family, we take care of each other. What followed was a long conversation about a world Marcos didn't know existed. The company, he was told, was essentially a hobby, a front, a place for them to meet. He was told it was one of the largest corporations on earth. Then they handed him a bank card with his name on it, a statement showing a balance of approximately $1.5 million USD, all under his name. All his, he asked. Is this the payment? Every man at the table looked at him with the same kind smile and said, yes, and it's just the beginning. That same day, Marcos was named a director of the company and inducted into a Masonic lodge. Within weeks, he was being introduced to politicians, senators, celebrities, and entrepreneurs. He attended parties in London and São Paulo. He met artists, famous ones, who, like him, had made their own arrangements. He had everything. One of his most disturbing accounts involves a party outside London. He was taken there by an actress, very well known, he says, and no, he will not say who, far from the city, a medieval-style mansion. Upon arrival, guests were given black masks and instructed to undress entirely. Only then were they led through a long corridor into an underground hall. The hall was lit entirely in red. In the center, a round bed. On the bed, a woman, her upper body covered by a black cloth, held in place by a metal bar that also restrained her arms, her face masked. Below the cloth, nothing. 5 men stood around the bed, muscular, unclothed. As soon as Marcos entered, they began. He was invited to participate. He did. When it was his turn, they removed the cloth from the woman, and he froze. It was the actress. The woman he had been secretly dating. She looked at him, kissed him, and whispered, "You're not the only one with little secrets. I'll spare you the rest of the details." Marcos includes them, he says, so people understand how control is exercised in these circles, how everyone has something on everyone, how the web holds itself together. The relationship ended not long after. Marcos was 22 when he met her. In a world of people who only cared about appearances, she was genuinely different, warm, grounded, religious. She had no idea who Marcos really was or what he had done. He fell in love. They dated for 7 years. Married when he was 29. She wanted children deeply, but struggled to conceive. 11 years into the marriage, their first child was born. 2 years later, the second. For a time, Marcos lived in a strange equilibrium. Power and darkness on one side, love and innocence on the other. He kept his wife entirely separate from what he was, until he couldn't. When the younger child was 2 years old, a senior figure in Marcos's organization came to him with a message. He had to sacrifice his child to prove his devotion to Lucifer or face consequences. Marcos sat with that. He had attended rituals before. He had seen things, but children had never been involved, and this was his child. For the first time since he was 19 years old, Marcos said no. And then he did the thing that changed everything. He told his wife everything, every pact, every ritual, every envelope and suitcase and mansion, all of it. Her reaction was devastation, and then, because of who she was, something extraordinary. She didn't leave. She told him that if he truly repented, he could be free of it, that it wasn't too late. He chose to believe her. He broke the pact, left the organization, began attending her church. 3 weeks later, he started giving away the money that had come from wherever it had come from. He thought it was over. His wife was kidnapped. Days passed, then 2 weeks, then they found her body. According to forensic reports, she had been dismembered and used in a ritual, one that looked exactly like the ones Marcos had attended for years. He understood then, in his bones, what he had cost other families. All those years of sitting at those tables, being part of those circles, he finally felt it. He was paralyzed by grief, terrified for his children. He sought help at churches, temples, spiritual communities. He found compassion, but the visitations didn't stop. Dark figures, shadows, presences that arrived at night and made his apartment feel like a cage. He was still recovering when both his children fell ill simultaneously. He loaded them into the car to take them to the hospital. There was an accident. Both children died. Marcos survived. With a severed spinal cord, he has not walked since. Today, Marcos lives in a wheelchair. He has no money, no family, no relief from whatever visits him at night. According to accounts shared online, including a Reddit post and a Brazilian video covering his story, he hears whispers. He writes about them. Voices that say, "You had everything we promised. Money, lust, power. Now we're taking what is ours. We'll come for the rest when it's time." We never spoke to Marcos directly. Everything you're hearing comes from what was left behind, fragments of a story scattered across the internet. And if those fragments are true, then this is the only thing that remains clear. It was never worth it. So, here we are. I read this 3 times before recording it, and every time, the part that shook me most wasn't the contract or the rituals. It was the moment he described his wife's response. That's the part that felt most real to me. Now, is this true? I can't verify it. No one can. He gave us no names, no dates, no locations that could be checked. He may be a man carrying genuine trauma. He may be someone with a brilliant and terrifying imagination. But here's what I'll say. The details he includes about how these networks operate, the corporate fronts, the mutual blackmail, the layers of access, those things are consistent with documented histories of closed power circles throughout the 20th century. If you want to understand what this kind of world might look like, I'd recommend watching Eyes Wide Shut, Kubrick's final film. It was released, won awards, and Kubrick died unexpectedly shortly after. Make of that what you will. The enemy, whatever you believe that to be, doesn't come with horns and fire. He comes with whiskey and a tailored suit and a suitcase full of cash. He comes with a voice that sounds like reason. He tells you 10 true things to make you believe one lie. The truth is this: evil is a trap, and the trap is always baited with something you actually want. The devil is already defeated. Scripture makes that clear. But a defeated enemy with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind, and he spends every moment trying to drag as many souls with him as he can. And his greatest trick has always been showing up exactly where you'd never expect to find him. Not in a dark alley, in a luxury car, in a briefcase full of cash, in a whisper that sounds like wisdom. Guard your heart. That's where the door is. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe and send this video to one friend who you think needs to hear it. You know who that person is. And if you have a story, something that happened that you've never been able to explain or never been able to tell anyone, send it to us at rawcreative.studio@outlook.com. We read everything. I'll see you in the next one.